Unfortunately, Harvard has not taken the president or the administration's demands seriously.
The White House is taking on Harvard after it became the first of the elite universities to defy the administration's efforts to take on so-called woke campus policies, restrictions that the university says amount to unacceptable limits on freedom of expression. The president is threatening Harvard's tax-exempt status, suggesting in a post on his Truth Social platform that it should be, quote, taxed as a political entity, end quote, unless it acts in, quote, the public interest.
Scott Jennings spars with Lulu Garcia on CNN. You know, she has this perspective of not agreeing with the fact that Harvard is getting ready to possibly get their funding taken away and their tax exemption taken away, and they're going to have to find out alternative means of funding. And Scott Jennings just beautifully educates her on why universities can't push narratives. And if they want to push hate and different things like that, fine. But they won't be able to get exemptions from the government. Check this out. This is a good one here. Make sure you like and subscribe.
The president of the United States pushing the bounds of his executive power farther and farther across so many realms of American life, including the courts, the legal profession, the media, and elite education. Now he's going head-to-head with the nation's oldest and wealthiest institution of higher learning, Harvard University.
Unfortunately, Harvard has not taken the president or the administration's demands seriously.
The White House is taking on Harvard after it became the first of the elite universities to defy the administration's efforts to take on so-called woke campus policies, restrictions that the university says amount to unacceptable limits on freedom of expression. Last night, the administration froze more than $2 billion in federal grants to the university. And today, the president is threatening Harvard's tax-exempt status, suggesting in a post on his Truth Social platform that it should be, quote, taxed as a political entity, end quote, unless it acts in, quote, the public interest.
When it comes to Harvard, as I said, the president has been quite clear they must follow federal law. He also wants to see Harvard apologize, and Harvard should apologize for the egregious anti-Semitism that took place on their college campus against Jewish American students.
Trump officials portray their fight against the most prestigious and liberal universities as an effort to combat anti-Semitism after contentious campus protests against the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. Harvard sees the battle differently. Its president declaring the university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights. Here, welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. Kristen Soltis-Anderson, I want to start with you on the big picture for Harvard University and the way that the administration is doing this. Because there's $2 billion already on the line. There are billions more that could be affected, those grants funding things like cancer research. But of course, there has been that explosion of protest. We've seen many anti-Semitic incidents on a lot of these campuses, and this has become a real lightning rod on the right. Of all of the things that we have seen happen so far this week, the number of things that certainly Democrats are basically apoplectic about, how do you see this confrontation with Harvard and other elite institutions fitting in?
So a confrontation with an institution like Harvard is one where Trump has picked a very ripe target. Confidence in higher education has really been plummeting in this country over the last decade. Even as recently as 2015, Gallup found a majority of Republicans said when you asked, do you have confidence in higher education? They said yes. And those numbers have fallen. They've fallen precipitously for Republicans, but also for Democrats. And I think part of the problem is, to quote Office Space, the question of what is it you would say you do here? That for a lot of institutions of higher education, that's not a question that they've clearly answered. And so when you ask people, why don't you have confidence? They think they've veered too far off mission. Some of these institutions, as you noted, they contain multitudes, right? They do great things like cancer research, but they have other things that I think a lot of taxpayers may be saying, I don't know if I want to fund this. Trump has sensed that, and that's why he views them as such a good target.
I will say, Lulu, these institutions of higher learning have educated an awful lot of the bipartisan people who come here to Washington and end up in positions of power.
I was about to say, it's always surprising to me that Harvard is like put as this kind of liberal bastion when you think about a number of Republicans Republicans and Wall Street executives who've gone
Yeah,
there.
well, we can put up a number of the Trump allies who attended Harvard. Now, I will say that the youngest of those that you see on your screen are about my age, so they're elder millennials, so perhaps a lot has changed in the intervening time. But I think, I really take Kristen's point, right? For the middle of the country, beating up on Harvard is not a problem for them, right? But on the other hand, there does seem to perhaps be some hypocrisy going on as well.
Look, as we see, Trump is showing to be a no-nonsense president. If you don't want to comply with what he's setting forth, you're going to face penalties. You know, the administration right now, I believe, is going after Maine for not following the rules that are being put forth with this current administration. And now Harvard is getting ready to suffer a lot of penalties for not taking care of anti-Semitic behavior on their campuses. Trump's not playing, this administration is not playing. And we're getting ready to see what the rest of this panel has to say about it, because the left is not taking accountability. And Scott Jennings is going to come in and he's going to make it known on why they need to follow directions. Make sure you like and subscribe.
I mean, I think to Kristen's point, and we saw this with the DEI fight, there was a reason that they did that first with Harvard, affirmative action, et cetera. Harvard is a ripe target. If you've never been there and you always know people who've been to Harvard, they'll tell you in the first 5 seconds that they went to Cambridge. They were in Cambridge. It's very annoying to the rest of us.
They went to a college outside Boston. I actually went to Cambridge, the original, for graduate school. So
there you
some
go.
people will say this to me. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not as highbrow as those of you who went to the second Cambridge, at least.
So you can see, just even in our conversation, it brings up some animus. But the wider context within which this sits is, of course, what is the purpose of what the administration is doing here? And we know from Chris Rufo, from Project 2025, and other ideas that have been put out there that they want to really take down anything that is viewed as the quote-unquote liberal establishment. And so what the administration asked of Harvard wasn't just about anti-Semitism. They asked things that were about who they admit, who gets tenure, things that are quite frankly not the remit of the federal government. And if you think about how Republicans have accused Democrats over and over again of weaponizing government, of weaponizing the federal government, here we're seeing this administration actually push into something that has never really been done in the same way before.
I mean, Scott Jennings, that seems like a fair point. I mean, if Democrats were doing this in a way that conservatives felt like was taking on some of their interests in these higher institutions, I feel like I would hear you talking about, hey, government's supposed to be more limited.
Why would Democrats be complaining about Harvard? Like 96% of the political contributions from the faculty go to Democrats from Harvard. There's no diversity of thought among the faculty there. And by the way, I should say, I've had some experience with it. I was a fellow at the IOP. Kristen was as well. I taught a class at the Harvard Kennedy School for a number of semesters. I had a good experience, but I think
But no diversity of thought, apparently.
But I think in recent years, particularly since October the 7th, the civil rights of these Jewish students on campus have clearly been violated. I don't think the university, Harvard, Columbia, a lot of these other Ivies have taken near enough steps to protect these students. They've been chased around campus, barred from buildings. Buildings have been taken over. I mean, it's ridiculous what's going on. And here's the deal. They take federal money. They have a $53 billion endowment. They take federal money. If you want to continue to take federal money, you're going to have to listen to the people who dole it out. And that's the Trump administration, who are standing up for these Jewish students. If they want to give up the federal money, you can create, I guess, the culture of hate that you want, and that's fine. But right now, they're entangled with the federal government, and they're going to have to deal with the president.
Adrian, I mean, I will say what the Trump administration is trying to do goes well beyond the anti-Semitism questions
1,000%.
and the points that are very well taken from you. And I have spoken to a lot of Jewish students and families who are concerned about their Jewish students on these campuses. There are absolutely challenges there. But this is also DEI. It's hiring, admissions. It is looking at some of the viewpoint diversity. That seems like something we could argue about. But how do you see it?
Well, first of all, I think Kristen's exactly right that this is something that this is where Trump is really good. His instincts are good. He knows he is delivering basically red meat to his base by saying, I'm going after a liberal institution like Harvard. I also agree with your point that what would happen if Republicans, all of a sudden, if Oral Roberts University or some of these super conservative, Republican-leaning organizations were also targeted by Democrats. So it goes both ways. I think the bottom line is this. this sets a dangerous precedent. If Harvard caves on this, which so far they have not, they've stood very firm and strong. If they cave on this, this sets a very dangerous precedent for universities that are not as well funded as Harvard. Harvard is the wealthiest university in the country, but what if we start going down the road with some of these universities that could be targeted that don't have the endowments that Harvard does? So I think, in the words of Barack Obama, who tweeted last night, applauds Harvard for standing strong against unlawful and ham-handed attempts by Donald Trump to stifle free speech and public education. And I think that that's the point that Democrats need to continue to drive, and anyone who wants to support the freedom of education.
And the only thing I'll say, to Scott's point is as follows. He said he'll have to tangle with the president if you get federal money. That's assuming that somehow this federal money is the president's. And in fact, this federal money is the people's, and it is the people who pay taxes. And the idea of the federal government is that you are supposed to actually, look at the people of the United States and try to deal with them fairly.
And who do the people elect to be stewards of their money? The President of the United States.
Yes, but
he's standing up for these Jewish
It's
students.
Congress. Technically Congress.
Who has to spend the money? Who has to cut the checks? Who has to cut your check? Who has to faithfully execute the laws of this country? It's the president.
But if this president
the
is
civil rights of
trying
these
to
students are being violated.
this president is trying to weaponize the federal purse strings. And the reason that this president is trying to weaponize the federal purse strings is for political reasons. Now, you can agree with those political reasons or you cannot agree with those political reasons. But poll after poll is actually saying that what the American people actually care about is their pocketbook and their purse strings. Issues like DEI, issues like all these other, things that they're getting involved in. That poll's very, very low. There's just a poll that came out from UMass. 2%, 3% of the Americans care about these issues. This is something that Donald Trump is
investing in. Do the Jewish students care about it? Do their families care about it? He's standing up for people who have no advocates on these campuses. Nobody on these campuses will stand up for them because it's not in vogue to do so on the campus. Trump shows up and stands up for the kids.
This is a wider issue than
and that's why they're upset about it.
Absolutely. I think
This
we've all
is not
made it
about
very clear that we
anti-Semitism.
certainly stand with the Jewish students.
The only people who don't make it
persecuted
clear
on
are the
these
Harvard
campuses.
people. The Ivies, they don't make it clear. They don't make it clear.
I think we can all agree that
we're
not all
here.
of these
They're
universities
there.
handle this, but to Casey's point, this is a much bigger, broader deal.
So obviously here, Lulu Navarro has no absolute point at all. She's trying to spar with Scott Jennings, and he's just destroying her. As we see and was given a logical answer, when it comes to these universities, they have been pushing left-leaning narratives for a long time. But if you want to receive federal money from the government, you're going to have to take care of things in a fair way. You're not going to be able to do all of these affirmative action things, which is discriminatory, which essentially is racist. Then you're not going to be able to allow things that target people of different religions on your campus. And if you're not going to take care of the situation, then you're going to lose funding. It's just as simple as that. So the fact that the left is pushing against this is not surprising because they want to push agendas and narratives all the time. So listen, this is a good one here. I hope you like this video. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll definitely see you on the next video.